Welcome back to Ride Out MMA. My name's Connor, and today we're going to be going over all of the fundamental footwork patterns that you should know if you're going to be getting into boxing, kickboxing, and martial arts. This is for beginner, maybe up to intermediate, right? Really basic stuff, but still super important to understand. We're going to be doing it all on the agility ladder here, so make sure you watch along from start to finish, and you're definitely going to learn something. So let's get started. Okay, so something just to understand before you're doing any of these footwork patterns, it's not necessarily about the speed that you're doing it, but it's about the consistency of it. So the entire time you got to be focusing on having perfect technique, working through the entire motion and not making it all choppy and weird feeling. It should flow perfectly. All of these are patterns and they should feel like a pattern all the way through. So our first four patterns here are going to be super simple, and it's just about moving through the ladder and kind of getting us started with understanding our footwork. So there's going to be four different patterns: a one-step, a two-step, a three-step, and a four-step. Yazzy's going to demonstrate for us. So the first one here is going to be one step per box. So while she's going through, it's going to be kind of high knees more or less, and every single box gets one step. Really, really easy, and this is kind of where we start. And she can go right back through, same deal, right? She's bringing her knees up while she's doing it, chopping her hands. Really, really easy stuff. Okay, for the second one that you're going to get into, it's going to be two steps per box. And you'd be surprised for people who are just starting using footwork, they screw this one up a lot. So do it right, do it with consistency and flow. Every single box gets two steps. Yazzie, you can start. All right. Beautiful. All right, chopping her feet all the way through. And a simple way to make it harder, you just start with the other foot, but that's okay. You do it again for me, Yaz. All right, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way through. Right, and it doesn't really matter how high your knees get up because this is about coordination more so than anything else. Okay, the next one that we're going to do, again, really easy, the three-step. This is going to be a shuffle moving side to side. And this is an important piece of footwork to understand because it's going to lead you into more advanced footworks in the future. And this is the building blocks for those. So when Yazzy's doing the three-step, the way that she always explains it, it's up, together, out, right? And you just watch her walk through this. So there's always one foot inside the ladder as she's walking through. Up, together, out. Up, together, out. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, as she's shuffling her way through. And that's more or less walking through it, but when you get good at it, it should be this really nonstop sequence of like sprinting side to side, right? And you see how she's still flowing, right? Really cool athletic movement. Yasmin, can you do that for us one more time, just because it's a little bit more difficult? Nice, looks really good. Excellent. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more too, you can do the exact same footwork, but go backwards with it. So something like this. Back together, out, back together, out, back together, out, right? As I chop my way through, right? And that takes a lot of coordination, but if you can get that down, then you definitely understand your footwork. Okay, the last one for all these very beginners starting building blocks pieces of footwork, the four-step, and it's going to be as easy as 2 in, 2 out, right? So you're just chopping your way up the ladder, in, out, out, in, out, out. Yazzie, can you demo for us, please? Very nice. What an awesome shirt you have on, which I just got made. Nice. So same thing again, one more time. All right, it gets you warmed up pretty quick. Yeah, look at her go. Nice. Excellent. And same thing goes for that three-step. If you can do this one backwards, it can be really cool and fun, challenging, right? And I can try to chop my arms with my footwork. But again, it's all about that coordination of stepping my feet, right, with smoothness and consistency. So those are the four basic pieces of footwork, kind of the fundamental building blocks that teach you just how to move your feet within an agility ladder. Don't worry, we're getting into all of the fighter stance stuff right now. Okay, this is part 2 of your fundamental footworks on the ladder, okay? So now we're gonna be getting into our fighter stance and how we should be walking and moving for fundamentals throughout the ladder. And again, when we're going through this, you wanna be focusing on having really great consistency. So every single step looks the same as the last, right? This is all about flowing our way through and having that really great tempo as we go through the ladder. So to start, you need to get yourself in your stance, and that could be a video for a different day. But again, that favorite word of mine, consistency. We need to be able to hold our stance almost the exact same as we're going through the ladder, right? When we're starting with this, it's always about a lead and a follow. We don't want to cross our feet or to bring our feet together, and that's exactly what the ladder is going to teach us right now. Okay, we're gonna get Yazzie to start inside the ladder for me here, all right? And when she's starting, her lead foot's gonna be in, her rear foot is gonna be out, and she's gonna be holding her fighter stance, whatever that looks like. So it could be elbows in, hands up, hands down. I don't really care as long as you do it with consistency. So, right, when she's stepping to her left, like I said, it's gonna be a lead, then a follow. So when she's moving to her left, she's always gonna start with her left foot and then follow with her right foot. And she just needs to be walking with smoothness to her left here. All right, just like this. And again, her feet aren't coming together, her feet aren't crossing. And a simple way to sort of keep that is like your front foot is right in the center of the box, your back foot is lined up with the step of the ladder. Hands are up and we're not bobbing back and forth, we're just floating to our left side. Vice versa, if she was going to go to her right here, she leads with her right and she follows with her left. Right, keeping that fighter stance the entire time. All right, one more time to the left for me. All right, she's marching, never crossing her feet, never bringing her feet together. All right, super simple stuff. All right, but very important to know, back to the right for me. Right, keeps us from making some mistakes of constantly shuffling or L-stepping away, which is something that you'll learn in the future. Our next one, when we're going forwards down the length of the ladder, exact same idea. If I want to go forwards, I need to lead with my front foot. So my front foot steps and then my back foot follows. In the same way we just did it here, she's only going to keep her lead foot inside the ladder. Lead foot's going to step forward. Right, pause there, right, and then the rear foot steps in. But you need to be careful not to square up your feet while you're going through this. We want to be able to maintain our fighter stance the entire time and not do something like this, where I'm stepping my back foot up right next to my front, which is what a lot of beginners do when they first start with this. So march for me, yes. She's in her fighter stance, marching forwards, foot's outside the ladder, foot's inside the ladder. Good. Now, vice versa, she's going backwards. Lead foot's going to stay inside the ladder. She leads with her rear foot and then follows with her front. Right, and she's going to do that for us one more time once she finishes here. Good. And forwards again. I find that a lot of beginners, when they first start, when you initially press them or you put a little bit of pressure on them, they almost always step their front foot away first because it's intuitive. It's how we learn to walk backwards one more time. But instead, we need to be able to maintain the stance because this entire time, Yazzie is ready to strike. And that's what we're going to get into right now with how to walk with our punches through the ladder here. Okay guys, this is part 3 of going through our fundamental footwork on the ladder. First, we learned just the basics of flowing through it and just getting our footwork started. The second one, we got into our fighter stance and learned how to just walk in that through the ladder. For this third one that we're gonna do, we're gonna be timing our feet with our hands. And that's really where this all comes into play. Being able to move our feet and our hands in unison. So we constantly have this working of our upper body and our lower body together. We don't want to have those broken up and sort of fragmented. If we're working them together, we're going to be doing our best footwork possible. So just to start, our most important punch, our jab. Yazzie's lead foot's going to be in and she's going to be working to her left. Whatever direction that we're going, we're going to be starting with the foot in that direction and timing it with our jab, no matter which direction we're going, whether it's to her left. So if she walks to her left here, as she steps her left foot, her jab is timed with that foot. And then as that jab hand comes back, her rear foot follows. So you can see that 1, 2, 1, 2. all the way through the ladder. Vice versa, when she's going to her right, as she's stepping her back foot, this is known as contralateral, where our left hand is going to go as our right foot steps out. And this is a great way to learn how to take angles as we're throwing our strikes. So she's going to walk to her right here, the right foot steps, the jab goes. As the jab comes back, so does our left foot. And you can see that march, right? Vice versa from when she's going forward. So she's facing straight down the ladder here. She's going to march forward. Pause on the first jab for me. She steps in on her jab, right? These are paired together. This is so important to understand. Now, as this jab hand comes back, her rear foot is going to follow. And you can see how the pattern should be able to flow all the way through the ladder here, where we get this infinite jab. March for me. All right. So it's not just about having a double jab, a triple jab. You should be able to do this infinitely, all right, and not have any break in the rhythm. And that goes for every direction. Going backwards, same deal. All right. As her back foot steps away, she pumps out her jab and then brings back her lead foot as her jab comes back. You can see how that's working there. All right. So really, really important to understand. Vice versa for when we're doing the cross. If I want to be able to throw my cross as I'm moving, right? There's no hesitation. It's not a step. And then I try to load as I throw it in. There's a little bit of telegraph there. I want to time my punch on my first step. So as my lead foot steps, boom. At the same time, I pivot and turn through on my cross, which is really common for more boxing, but MMA, kickboxing, Muay Thai, maybe sometimes they miss this. This is a very common way in boxing to throw your cross, of sort of diving in on it while still keeping balance between our feet. So when we're practicing this on the ladder, her lead foot's going to step in. As her lead foot steps and she throws her cross, she pauses, right? As that cross hand comes back, her rear foot's going to follow, and she should be in her perfect stance again. All right. She feel comfortable and do it again. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, get that going. It's hard coordination, but once you learn it, right, you get the flow going. It looks really good. Now, vice versa, you're going to your right, right? That rear foot steps out, and at the same time that foot lands, she should be throwing her cross. And again, this is like a subtle way to take an angle, or maybe if you're already being evasive and you're moving away, right? You're dodging, right? You're moving out of the line and replacing it with your cross. Something like that's how I kind of imagine this technique being applied. Cool. Now going forwards down the ladder, same concept, lead foot steps, cross follows. All right, you can see how everything is timed together, her upper and lower body. And again, it's always coming back to coordination with all of these techniques. Good, and she's going backwards, a little harder. All right, it's very counterintuitive, but it's timing that every fighter, every athlete should understand. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Perfect. Right? So we know how to step with our jab on our first step. And that could be any lead hand, right? It could be a hook, an uppercut, doesn't really matter. Now we know how to step with our cross on our first step. And again, it could be any rear-handed strike. This applies for all of those punches. But if we want to put them together for a jab cross, she's walking to her left on her jab cross. On that first step, she throws her jab. On that follow-up step, as her back foot comes in, she lands her cross. So just to get the rhythm going, just keep it a constant march for me, yes? Right? She's just going to keep marching. All right. And this is, again, just figuring out that timing of working hands and feet together. If she's going back the other direction, again, we're going to start with the jab on the first step. And as the lead foot follows, we're going to throw our cross. Can you do it a lot slower for me, please? She goes jab on the first step. And then as the lead foot follows, cross on the second one. So she can get a constant march again. Again, don't worry too much about pivoting. Just give me timing as you walk your way through. Yeah. All right, she's trying to turn her shoulders. She's bringing her hands back the entire time. All right, same thing going forwards. She's marching forwards. Lead hand, lead foot together. Rear hand, rear foot together. Nice. Now, this isn't going to be the prettiest punching that you've ever thrown in your life, but the timing and coordination should be perfect. Going backwards. All right, just keep it a constant rhythm for me, Az. Thanks. Good job. Very nice. Awesome. All right, looks really, really good. So, right, we can break that up into twos as well, where it gets a little bit more advanced, a little bit more intermediate, where when I step into that jab cross, it should be 1, 2, and I turn all the way through, then come back to my stance. And that should look like a perfect jab cross. All right, I'm in my stance. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Versus just the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Two kind of different goals when we're doing it those ways, right? The first one, the march, figure out the timing, figure out the tempo. The second one, kind of make it a little bit more explosive as to how you would throw it in a real fight or competition. Okay, we're gonna get into the next part here of going ins and outs. All right, guys, so our final piece of our fundamental footwork when we're working on the ladder, learning all of our fighter stances, we started with all the basics, right? Just being able to move through the ladder with some really simple footwork. The second one, we learned how to just walk in our fighter stance. The third, we learned how to walk with our punches in our fighter stance. And now we're gonna learn how to enter and exit quickly in our fighter stance. So if Yazzie could just start in the ladder for me here, right? The point of this one is to learn how to quickly exit out, right? And how to get ourselves right back into the action, right? Or to get into the action and then get right back out again. This is always that footwork that you're going to be getting into without just diving and losing our balance as we try to move into the strike, or overreacting and sort of jumping away and completely losing our stance. So when we're doing this, what's important to understand is how our feet are driving us into these pieces of footwork. So instead of thinking about pulling yourself away, right, with your back foot, or pulling yourself in with your front foot, you need to be able to push yourself away. So my front foot's gonna drive me away, right? Even if my back foot was floating here, you can see how I can sort of launch myself back, right? Or how I drive myself in, right? If my front foot was floating, my back foot would push me in, right? So when we're going through this, there's going to be basically 4 steps. She's going to step in with her lead foot, boom, her rear foot follows, and then she's going to drive out, right, as her rear foot leads her way out, right? And she's just going to work her way down the ladder like this, right? So she's driving herself straight back and then in on a subtle angle, keeping her stance the entire time and always making sure she's touching her feet down. She's not floating in and floating out or making it a jump. So now even from this angle, she's gonna drive herself out to the right. So she's pushing with that front foot to give a subtle angle and then bring herself straight in as to never cross her feet, okay? Or bring her feet together, all right? And again, for beginners, there's a lot of that bringing their feet together stuff. All right, we need to avoid that when we're learning our fundamentals. Perfect. So again, we have that 1, 2 on the way in. I should be perfectly balanced in my stance. And then again, 1, 2 on the way out. Not just doing this, where my feet are floating and I'm sort of just jumping in and out, which is a subtle thing that you may not notice when you first do this, but really make sure to feel the bottoms of your feet. Even making it as definitive as really stepping the feet down with every single movement. So, right, now to time that with our punches. So when I step in, my lead foot's gonna step, boom. At the same time my lead foot steps, I'm gonna land my jab. Now as my rear foot follows, I pivot and throw my cross. Now my front foot should have a little bit of weight on it to push me back out. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now that's a little broken up and that's where you should start until you learn how to do it with rhythm. So if Yazzie does it, I always like saying slow but with flow. So she goes, keeping her feet apart the entire time, stepping in on her jab cross and then getting right back out. 1, 2, 1, 2. Planting her back foot. You can even hear it when she hits the ground. All right. We know that foot is heavy on the mat when she lands her cross. Again, it's all about that timing and tempo. So if she wants to go back the other direction, she enters in, 1, 2, and then takes that angle on the way out as to line herself up with that new box. There we go. So you can see there's some subtle differences between how you'd move to your lead side with these ins and outs and how you would move to your rear side. Perfect. Right. And just always make sure that you're turning through with your shoulders on your punches, making sure that your hips are involved as well, right? And finding balance through this entire motion. And again, keeping that consistency and tempo all the way through, never losing your stance, never crossing your feet, never bringing your feet together for all of these fundamental footworks. I'm not saying that, right? There's going to be moments in the future where, as an advanced fighter, you can bring your feet together, you can cross your feet, but in general, in terms of fundamentals, it's something that we want to try to avoid when we're first learning. Anyway, so that's the end of this fundamental footworks lesson, right? When we're working on the agility ladder here, make sure you watch all 4 parts, and thank you so much, Yazzie, for helping us. Subscribe to Ride Out MMA, follow me on Instagram, all that stuff. And we'll see you next time.